So I've sanded it up to about 220 grit, and it's really smooth. So now it can be painted. But before I do that, I'm just gonna mask off the edges because the top is gonna be painted separately from the back and sides. Now I need to make sure I mask off the top extremely well because I don't want any primer to get on the oak. Because if you can tell, I'm gonna be doing natural binding. So I have masked off every area where I don't want to get paint, which is pretty much just the binding and the neck pocket, because I'm perfectly fine with paint getting in here and here. So the primer I'm going to be using is Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch Gray Primer. Now you can start typing away in the comments saying stuff like, oh, I use this or this is better. Well, I don't care. I use this, it's easy to use, it's cheap. Yeah, I'm not going to use what you tell me to use because I use this. So unfortunately, you can probably tell there's a lot of grain. Now I've used this grain filler numerous times before and it has worked flawlessly in the past, but maybe it's just getting a little old, or maybe it's because I've never worked with oak before. So I did have to put on this primer very, very thick, and of course I was going to sand it back anyways before adding the coats of actual paint, but there's still going to be some grain. Now I personally do really like grain for solid colors. I think it just looks really great, but this isn't quite going to be a solid color, so I mean, we'll just see how it turns out in the end. Maybe it'll look great. Okay, so I've sanded this all back, it's smooth, and it's prepped for the next coats of paint. So for these next few base coats, I'm going to be using Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch Black. One thing that you probably notice is that all of the paints I'm going to be using for this whole project are from Rust-Oleum. And that's just because I love them. I mean, this stuff is really good. Okay, so here's where the real magic starts to happen. I'm gonna add a can of this Rust-Oleum purple glitter. Now this stuff, normally you'd put down a base coat of the same color if you want to get that color of the glitter, because that can give you a metallic look. It's very shimmery, but I found that this can isn't really the color I was looking for, but if I put down a base of black, it works very well. So it sort of gives a black with some purple metallic in it. Now this paint is very thick and very tricky to use. You gotta put it on really lightly. So I'm probably gonna struggle a little bit with this, but let's just see how it goes. See, so you probably just saw there, that was a very, very quick and fast, very light coat. And look at it now. It's like rainbow, purple, black. Once I start adding clear coat to this, it's gonna really pop out. I wanna add a sort of black burst around the edges, just so that the binding can really pop. So let's do that now. So you can see there just a very, very subtle black burst around the edges. I want to let this dry for a bit, and then I'm going to pull all the tape off, and we'll see how this came out. Okay, so now it's time for the moment that hopefully you've been waiting for. The tape pull. Yeah, so let's take a look at this. You've got all these different colors of the rainbow, but you got mostly black and purple. Looks really great. Once this dries, I'm gonna clean up the edges here, and then I'll paint the back. Wait, here's one thing I forgot. I forgot to peel the tape from my F-hole. So let's get with that. You got those nice sharp accent colors. Now I think I'll just snap my fingers and it'll be the next day. So I masked up the edges to conceal the binding, and I hooked up the body to my usual jig for painting. So now I'm going to paint the back and the neck, which, as you see here, I've masked off everywhere except the headstock. I'm using a Trader Joe's wine bag. Make sure I don't get paint on that neck. So we got the coats of paint on it, put some glitter on the back, so it's pretty similar to the finish on the front. Slightly less glitter though, and no black burst. So now we can just go ahead and pull off this tape. Now I did not film this, but I added a few coats of Rust-Oleum triple thick glaze. Now you can see it's sort of a preview of how this is going to look, because you can see how much sparkle it really brings out in this glitter. But if you're looking closely, still very rough. That's because I'm only using this glaze as a sealer for the glitter, to keep it trapped in place and to help smoothen it out. So I'm going to sand this down with 800 grit sandpaper. So now that I've made it as smooth as possible without busting through the glaze coat, I'm going to use this Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch Gloss Clear. This stuff is the stuff I always use. It's incredible. And if you apply it right, it leaves a very high gloss finish.